For more than 11 years, Sue-Ann Laserson has been the victim of gross corruption at the hands of unscrupulous individuals. The ordeal she has lived through has brought to light some serious shortcomings in our justice system and the legal profession. Blatant examples of fraud, shady deals, unrivaled greed, and general corruption appear to be commonplace. Sue-Ann's story goes back to 1990 when she married Ivor Laserson, who died in June 2002. His estate still has not been finalized. Ivor was the owner of a successful law firm specializing in matrimonial law. They lived a life of luxury until Ivor's health started failing. A serious brain disorder made him lose his memory and other bodily functions and resulted in a complete change of behavior.
When Ivor first became ill, his loss of memory was the most noticeable. He would forget my name, call me by his first wife's name. He would forget important information provided by his clients, who asked me why was he still carrying on practicing law. And then when he became incontinent in front of his clients and would vomit in front of his clients, I attended to this myself because he was unable to control his bowel movements. So I cleaned up the bathrooms and I bought a big plastic cover for the bed. And generally it was a very difficult time for Ivor and for myself.
At this time, Sue-Ann discovered that, unknown to her, Ivor had signed new wills and codicils, all prepared at his practice with the help of his staff, which in the end Sue-Ann was disinherited, and everything he owned was left to his two daughters from a previous marriage who were not prepared to look after their dying father, but were nevertheless determined to get the maximum benefit from his estate. Sue-Ann could not believe that Ivor could have signed the amended wills. She even had the signature on the last codicil analysed by a handwriting expert, Mr. Cecil Greenfield, who found a number of irregularities and was convinced that it had been forged.
Ivor's wills always started with the sentence, I, Ivor Laserson, being of sound mind, etc., etc. Being in sound mind, after clinical tests by a neuropsychologist the year before he died, it was proved that he was incapable of making a valid document such as a will. Whatever information was given to him would go in one ear and out the other. I feel very strongly that he was influenced at this time of the changing wills, and also that the witnesses were not present at the time that he signed them.
Gaynor Becker, Sue-Ann's cousin, had been a witness to the decline of the marriage.
I was really shocked to hear what was happening to my cousin Sue-Ann. After living a life of luxury, I suppose, she was left practically destitute and without even a roof over her head. You know, during her marriage to Ivor, Sue-Ann was operating a very successful business. She was importing good quality clothes that weren't obtainable in South Africa. And she had to give it all up, you know, to look after Ivor, who insisted that she looked after him. And this meant that she had no money of her own, since most of the money that she earned from her business, she actually ploughed back into the house, into the maintenance and repairs and furnishings, you know, of their home. And Ivor always promised that he would compensate her for everything that she contributed. But increasingly, you know, forgetful and illogical, he failed to fulfill even his written promises.
Ivor's behavior became more and more threatening.
I started to fear for my own life. Ivor would look at me with a weird expression sometimes on his face. His eyes would widen and he would snarl at me and say, "I'll get you." And I had no idea what this pertained to, but if supper was late, he'd say, I'll get you to. I approached his colleagues for assistance, and they all said the only way of obtaining maintenance from his estate when he died was to divorce him. I shared this with the neuropsychologist, who was greatly concerned for my safety and asked me to leave the matrimonial home before the summons was served. I left in a hurry with just some of my things and the 4 dogs, and went to stay with friends. After I left, Ivor's elder daughter, Dana Lazarson, flew up from Cape Town and took charge. The gate lock was changed, and the only thing left for me to collect were the dog houses, which were put on the pavement. And Dana and Ivor's ex-partner, Kim Meikle, together made arrangements for the house to be sold. On receipt of the divorce summons, Ivor collapsed into a coma. When he came out of the coma for a short while, he accepted the offer to purchase via Pam Golding Properties and died soon thereafter. I was barred from seeing him at the hospital, and I was barred from going to his funeral. According to the rabbi who I phoned, Dana intended to make a scene if I attended. I was blamed for Ivor's death because of the divorce summons, yet Lindy Lazarson had advised me that a divorce would be preferable in the circumstances. During the 14-day period, during which time the estate is technically frozen, Ivor's 2 daughters cleaned out the entire contents of my home, which included some of my family heirlooms. Dana then signed a contract with Pickford's Removals, stating that she owned everything, so they had no problem taking everything away that I had also owned for in some 30 years.
Sue Ann, now destitute and homeless, realized that she was going to have a battle on her hands with her late husband's dishonest 2 daughters and ex-partner, Kim Meikle. She felt that she needed a better understanding why the law was not working. So she enrolled on a 1-year correspondence course at UNISA, a known specialized field of the law, and obtained a level 6 diploma which enables her to administer insolvent and deceased estates. A number of established attorneys now often enlist her services in the administration of estates. Ivor died before the divorce could be finalized, and with her newly acquired knowledge of the law, Sue Ann started the uphill battle to contest the will in which her husband had failed to provide for her. The extent of the corruption and dishonesty throughout the whole of our legal system was an absolute eye-opener for her. A well-known principle in matrimonial law states that it is unconstitutional to leave one's sole dependent desolate and without sufficient funds to survive. This is exactly what happened to Sue Ann. Yet everywhere she went, she came up against unbelievable resistance. To sum up, here are the blatant crimes to which Sue Ann has fallen victim. The final will, drawn up under extremely suspicious circumstances, signed by a dying man who was definitely not in his right mind, the appointment of the daughters as co-executrices, obviously with Ivor's ex-partner as their agent, and the way they took control over all Ivor's assets.
Conclusive evidence of fraud has been brought to the attention of the Master's Office for the last 11 years, but absolutely nothing has been done about it.
The gross incompetence of the legal profession that failed to advise her on the alternatives for the need to contest a will, and who instead advised her to divorce Ivor, their colleague, when he was dying.
I've often felt that there's a conspiracy against me, right from the beginning, when Ivor's colleagues advised me incorrectly to divorce him, knowing full well that under the Maintenance of the Surviving Spouses Act, a divorced spouse would not have a claim against the deceased estate.
The unbelievable lack of duty and care of the Master's Office. Sue Ann had to deal with Mrs. Ramahanelo, who holds the position of Deputy Master, but is generally regarded in the legal profession as totally incompetent, lazy, and disinterested in anyone's problems.
Deputy Master Mrs. Ramanella is in charge of the deceased group that has been managing my husband's file. Now, 11 years after his death, they've finally given their approval to Kim Meikle attorneys and to my husband's daughters to finalise the estate. But the documents are fraudulent, and I've told Mrs. Ramanella this for many years. She said if I don't like her decision, I can take it to court.
The deliberate under-evaluation, misrepresentation of the estate by the two daughters and ex-partner.
They have done everything in their power to undervalue the estate that would serve to prejudice my claim in support of the maintenance of the Surviving Spouses Act. They've concealed assets, they've undervalued assets, they've illegally dispersed of assets and diminished the estate from once multi-millions to very little, which really prejudiced me.
The blatant theft of the contents of Sue Ann's home and personal possessions.
They had absolutely no right to practically evict me from the matrimonial home, let alone steal all its contents.
The daughters had no right to bar Sue Ann from the hospital or the funeral.
They blamed Sue Ann for Ivan's death because of the divorce summons served on him. Yet Lindy had written to Sue Ann advising her to divorce her father. Sue Ann had cared for Iva all this time. Even after she left, she was bringing him these delicious meals, which she took, she cooked really well, and brought these meals to him while he was in hospital. Dana had refused to look after Ivan, stating that he was impossible. He was.
In support of a special court order, which allowed me to investigate all Iva's assets locally and abroad, I discovered the foreign assets that Dana and Lindy Lazarson and Kim Meikle attorneys advised that did not exist. Yet Lindy, I discovered, had signing powers for them because she lives in America. I also discovered fraudulent activities with the sale of the properties, and I brought all of this to the attention of the authorities, who did nothing about it, including the Master's Office. Eventually, I opened a case with the Specialised Commercial Crime Unit. I was told that I had a very good case, but they have recently declined to prosecute, and the matter has now been escalated to the National Prosecuting Authority for their decision.
I've known Sue Ann all my life. We're cousins, and we as a family used to visit them on their amazing Karoo farm. And to understand Sue Ann, it's important to know her background, because her father was a very statuesque, loyal, respected man of the community. He bred race horses. He was loving, he was gentle, he was even quite poetic, and he instilled in Sue Ann that wrongs will be righted, and that's how she lived. Her mother, on the other hand, was a very accomplished woman. They lived in the middle of the Karoo, and she ran what could only be described as an oasis. She was an incredible cook. She sewed. She even did her own dry cleaning. And Sue Ann gets that from her mother too. Her mother was also very creative. The home was beautiful, filled with wonderful things. And this is Sue Ann's life. So that when Sue Ann marries a man that she admires, she expects him to be just as honest and loyal, and I think she feels very betrayed.
In spite of all the conclusive evidence available, the National Prosecuting Authority has refused to prosecute. Legal practitioners are fed up with the corruption and inefficiency of our legal system. It is obvious that Sue Lazarson has been the victim of immense fraud brought about by unequaled greed and corruption, resulting in blatant criminal actions that were totally ignored by an ineffective legal system, a system that should be the backbone of our society. The time has come for a full investigation into its weaknesses, dishonesty, and irregularities. The only question is, who will do it?